I mean by resilience? What is resilience? So resilience is the ability to bounce back from an adversity, setback, or trauma. Okay. So resilience वो ability है which helps us bounce back if there is an adversity, if there is a difficult situation, or if we undergo trauma, then if we are able to bounce back, that means we have resilience. We are looking at examples of resilience. So Nelson Mandela is a great example that he spent 27 years in solitary confinement in a jail, yet he came out, he brought the whites and blacks of South Africa together and he became a president. Dalai Lama also is an example of resilience because today, if you see, there are a lot of celebrities, Hollywood celebrities and actors who have embraced Buddhism because Tibetan Buddhism has now spread all across the world. And they speak for freeing Tibet. And they have not lost their will to peacefully fight and defend their right to a political system in Tibet, and that movement is still alive. So he was very young, Dalai Lama, when he had to flee the country. I think it was in 1967 or 69, I don't remember correctly. That's when he fled to India. But that political system is still alive.
19.
So Dalai Lama is an example. There are many other. Oprah Winfrey. How many of you have heard about Oprah Winfrey? She was a black woman who was sexually abused during childhood, and she was poor. So she had all the things which could go wrong. She was poor, she was black, she was woman, and she was, I think, raped when she was pretty young. And despite that, despite all those odds, she bounced back. And at one time, she was the highest paid TV personality in the United States. So she was earning millions of dollars every year. And she has inspired so many authors. And she used to run a talk show on which great personalities would come. And if some author was able to appear on her show, their book would be an instant hit. It would become an instant bestseller. She had so much reach and following. So, and she bounced back from all those circumstances. Yes, Ayana, she was the first richest black American. You are right. Looking at more such examples, any hero which we see in mythology or even in movies or in stories, always the hero is somebody who bounces back from an adversity. They undergo some difficult circumstances, some setback, and they always bounce back. And in heroes, we can see even Lord Rama, he had to spend 14 years in Vanvas, and yet he conquered Ravana, overcame, and then he came back to his kingdom. So most of the heroes have resilience. Now let's look at companies. Which companies are resilient? Have you heard about General Electric? That company is over 100 years old, and they saw the recession and they have seen so many ups and downs. Still, they are running pretty well and doing very nice. They had to cut down during the last recession in 2008. They had to make drastic changes in the way they function. and they bought over a bank, they cut down, they restructured, they did everything which was needed to not only survive but thrive. IBM, Coca-Cola, all of these companies, they are more than 100 years old. And most of the startups which we see today, beyond 5 years, more than 95% of the startups, they fail. They don't go beyond 5 years. So what does that tell you about companies which are more than 100 years old? Because they have resilience. And for resilience, you need to have the ability to tackle change, because change is upon us every single day. So when things change, when COVID came, so many people perished, so many companies perished, so many businesses shut down. But the businesses which were resilient, they were able to survive. There was one pizza company in Canada, and when COVID hit, their sales fell, and people were not coming and buying their pizzas, because there was a lockdown, they were at homes. So what they did, they started selling the ingredients of pizzas, and their sales picked up again, and they were not able not even not just they were surviving, they were able to make good profit because they were resilient, they were adaptive to change. And in personal lives, when we have setbacks, so many people, they undergo relationship issues, or you can think of the cafe coffee day. The gentleman who was heading cafe coffee day, due to debt, he had a mental breakdown and he committed suicide. And there was about if I don't remember, 12,000 crores worth of debt on that company. And his wife, despite losing her husband, despite the business being in trouble, she fought back, and she has, I think, it was 1,200 crores. I'm sorry, it was not 12,000 crores. And she has paid back 600 to 700 crores in 3 to 4 years. It was just before COVID when he committed suicide. So somebody who has a personal tragedy, who has lost her husband, and not only she survives that, she helps the company bounce back. That is resilience. And if we look at communities, which communities are resilient? If we look at the story of Japan, in 1945, we all know that in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, two cities in Japan, there was an atomic bomb was dropped over them, and it totally destroyed the populations of those cities. And even those who survived, they had severe health issues, and kids who would be born, they would be born with deformities because of the radiation. But they bounced back in such a way that Japan became a leader in electronics as well as automobiles. So if you think about any electronics, all inventions were happening in Japan, and they were number one. And automobile segment, now of course America and other companies have kind of progressed and giving competition to them, but Japanese automobiles were the most reliable automobiles, and they had the biggest market share. And how could they bounce back? And also looking at the communities, we have already talked about Dalai Lama. When we talk about Dalai Lama, if you also talk about Tibetan community, you would see them. There are Tibetan colonies in India, in various countries. And same way, if you look at Sikhs, In 1984, there was a government-sponsored campaign of genocide against them, and they bounced back from that. And today, if somebody talks about Sikhs or somebody with a turban, their impression is that these are very kind people, compassionate, and who are of a helpful nature. And they could do that by bouncing back because they had resilience. There are so many uh, Sikhs who came from Afghanistan because they were routed there, and after coming to India, they were able to set their businesses from afresh, and they were from ground up. They were able to build back their businesses, and that ability is resilience. So we have seen individuals, we have seen nations, we have seen communities who are resilient. So now, regardless of whether it is lachilapan, pratirod, or it is the ability to not only withstand trauma, but what actually happens that if you suffer a trauma, this was their natural state before trauma hit them. And when there is trauma, definitely there is a temporary setback. But afterwards, they bounce the exact same state. That is resilience. So in our normal lives, what are the kind of adversities which we can face? हम किस किस तरह के बुरी चीजें हमारे साथ होती हैं? Loss of a loved one, and this could be due to death, or sometimes it is due to divorce, or sometimes a person leaves us. We don't know where that person has gone. कईयों के बेटे घर छोड़ के चले जाते हैं और उनको पता नहीं लगता कि वो कहाँ चले गए. So that kind of a loss, or sometimes somebody is kidnapped, children go missing. So when that loss happens, some people they break down completely. कईयों का जब डिवोर्स होता है, they are not able to cope up, they leave their jobs, but ultimately they are able to bounce back. But it leaves them scarred, it leaves them damaged in a certain way that they are not able to live their life in the same fashion as they were before the divorce. Some people, they give up on marriage. They lose faith in the opposite gender. If a female undergoes divorce, she says, I cannot trust men because I failed in a marriage, or I got deceived, duped, cheated, or abused in a relationship or a marriage. They say that, oh, I cannot trust people again. I cannot get into a relationship. I cannot get into a marriage. But if you are resilient, then not only will you overcome that, but you will be open for a new chapter if you are resilient. And same way, loss of money, there could be debt or financial loss. So many companies, they wind up once they are in debt. And the biggest example in front of us is the Ambani brothers. When the younger Ambani, he faced financial difficulty, his companies wound up and he ended up in debt. And there was one instance where the elder Ambani would not have financially helped the younger brother. He would have ended up in jail because he could not, his financial commitments, he could not meet those financial commitments because he did not have the money. So is Mr. Younger Ambani resilient? No. And someone is sharing Amitabh Bachchan. Yes, Amitabh Bachchan was also resilient, but he also got help from some person who had a very political clout, and he had links with industrialists. But regardless of that, yes, he bounced back. So we have so many stories of people bouncing back But yet we see so many of us in our daily lives, when we suffer a loss, when we suffer either financial adversity, or even there is persecution of so many communities. If you see the Kurds or Kurds, they do not have a nation. If you look at the Palestine, their land is occupied by Israel, and they demolish their houses, they cut off their electricity, water supply, and they live in very harsh, difficult circumstances, yet they are resilient. So it does not matter what kind of adversity you face, it does not matter what kind of loss you face. Now let us look at, okay, what makes resilient? How can we develop resilience? So is it something which we are born with? तो जब कोई बच्चा पैदा होता है, वो कहाँ से सीखता है? वो अपने आसपास देखता है. That child, when he looks at his parents and his elders, extended family, people immediately surrounding him or her, that child sees how do they act. And if he or she sees, okay, the elder ones, my parents, they capitulate the moment something bad happens. They run away. They don't fight. So Manish ji had talked about fight or flight. The basic nature of human being is fight or flight. And what is this fight or flight? Either we will fight the circumstances, whatever is happening, or we will run away from there. And this is the, our brain has three different parts. I won't go deep into that today. And one of it is the reptilian brain. So when in the evolution journey we were reptilians, that part is still retained, and the reptilian brain has the survival function. And in order to survive, it actually makes a determination that do I fight what I'm facing, or do I run away and survive? And most of us, we decide to flee rather than fight. तो फाइटर्स बहुत कम होते हैं. जो फाइटर्स होते हैं वो आर्मी में जाते हैं, जो फाइटर्स होते हैं वो पुलिस में, पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेस में जाते हैं. And those are the people whom you would see that yesterday I was looking at a video of one guy who jumped from a plane, and which is a pretty common sight these days. People do skydiving, people jump from planes very in a routine fashion. But what was the difference? This person, he jumped without a parachute. Yeah, let me repeat. He did not have a parachute and he jumped. And they had a huge, a trap into which he fell and he survived. But how much guts, how much courage does it take somebody to actually go and pinpoint, and within that area he has to fall, and due to the wind, due to so many different factors, what if he doesn't land there? There will be instant death. But if you have that courage within, so courage and resilience, there is a correlation between them. If you don't have courage, if you are coward, if you lack inner courage, then you won't be able to fight, you won't be resilient. So if you ask me, inner courage is what's needed for resilience. And all the people who fought back, all the communities, all the countries who have shown resilience, it is because of the courage. And now where does this courage comes from? This courage comes from within, or you can say from our soul. So one needs to have a strong spiritual foundation. Those who have a strong spiritual foundation, They are resilient. How many of you agree with me here? Dalai Lama has a strong spiritual foundation. Sikhs have a strong spiritual foundation. And everyone, because you see around you, you only see adversity. कि जब आपके सामने वो चुनौती आई है, आपको उसमें लॉजिकली, इफ यू थिंक लॉजिकली, यू वोंट सी अ वे आउट, बट यू हैव टू हैव होप. Hope in adversity comes if you have a strong spiritual foundation, because physically we may be weak, our bones would have shattered. I think there is a lady in Pakistan, I am not able to recall her name right now. She has a TED talk, and from waist down all her bones were crushed. She was paralytic, and she overcame that circumstance, and now she is a big influencer. She is inspiring others. So how come? So physically, when we break down, where does that courage come from? That courage comes from faith. Faith in human ability to survive against all odds. So अगर आपके पास एक आध्यात्मिक आधारशिला है, और वो आध्यात्मिक आधारशिला कहाँ से आती है? You need to have a spiritual practice like a meditation or some ritual which you do every day. Some spiritual ritual. कोई लोग पूजा करते हैं, कुछ लोग पाठ करते हैं, कुछ लोग जप करते हैं, कुछ लोग, and that gives you that inner courage. And also looking at the stories, when you read the stories of valor and courage, that gives you that power, that inner power के yes, if they can do it, so can I. अगर वो लोग चुनौतियों का सामना कर सकते हैं, तो मैं भी चुनौतियों का सामना कर सकता हूं या कर सकती हूं. So when we read the stories of courage, stories of resilience, that gives us resilience. Now, all of us, we have a map of the world. Now, what do I mean by map of the world? अगर आप अपने आप से पूछें, when you wake up every morning, and if you ask yourself this question, am I living in a hostile world or a friendly world? So if I pose this question to the audience here, what would be your answer? Please type H in the chat if you feel that we are living in a hostile world, or type F in the chat if you feel that we are living in a friendly world. आप चैट में H लिखेंगे अगर आप मानते हैं कि ये hostile world है, and type. So I'm seeing all F's here, no H. Yeah, so one person says H. Now who is correct and who is wrong? All the answers are correct. Whether you feel that it is a friendly world or a hostile world, it is true. For you, it is true. Without sounding political, there are some communities who feel and who propagate this view that their community is in danger. और वो जो कहते हैं हमें खतरा है, जिससे वो कहते हैं ना खतरा है, वो कम्युनिटी कहती है हमें इनसे खतरा है. तो किसको किससे खतरा है? Who is telling the truth? It's all a perception. अगर आपको लगता है कि it's a hostile world, that will be true for you, and you will act as if it's a hostile world. And if you feel that it is a friendly world, you will act as if it's a friendly world. एंड बोथ आर ट्रू. जो भी आप उसमें बिलीव करेंगे वो आपके लिए सत्य होगा. बट देयर इज अ चॉइस. एंड नाउ रेजिलियंट पीपल वो क्या आंसर चूज करेंगे कि वर्ल्ड हॉस्टाइल है. सिंस centuries there have been wars, there have been violence, rapes, people killed in most brutal fashion, और वो आज तक चल रहा है. अगर आप न्यूज खोलते हैं सुबह सुबह मोबाइल पे या न्यूज़पेपर में या टेलीविजन पे, most of the news is negative. Most of the news talks about one human being or a group of human beings ill treating other human beings, killing, raping, maiming, chori, dakati, balatkar. All of that is negative news. So if we look at that and take that as the truth that what is happening in the world is bad, we will believe that this is a hostile world. And as I said, कि some people believe कि हमारा धर्म खतरे में है या हमारी कम्युनिटी खतरे में है या हमारा समुदाय खतरे में है, हमारी कास्ट वाले लोगों के साथ अत्याचार होता है. That becomes their map of the world. And if your map of the world is everybody is against me, कि सभी मेरे खिलाफ हैं, मैं इनका सामना नहीं कर सकता, you will act in a cowardly fashion. You won't fight. तो आपके मैप से, जो आपका मैप ऑफ द वर्ल्ड है, उससे आपका वर्ल्ड भी ओरिजिनेट होगा एंड दैट विल डिक्टेट योर बिहेवियर. एंड you will give up at the first opportunity. When there is an adversity, when there is a tough circumstance, something happens, a loss in your business, you will give up. And how many people they survive that? Because एक बिजनेस का नहीं चला, दूसरा नहीं चला, तीसरा. जब तक आप सक्सीड नहीं होते, आप बार बार उसमें एफर्ट्स डालते रहते हैं. एंड व्हाट कीप्स यू गोइंग इज रेजिलियंस. एंड अनदर कम्युनिटी which is highly resilient are the people of Okinawa in Japan. And what is so special about people of Okinawa? Actually, there are many blue zones in the world, and blue zone is one where people live long and healthy lives. So in Okinawa, most of the people are 100 plus. They live over 100 years and they are very, very healthy. People in 80s, they go around without a stick and they do weeds, they plow the fields, they till, they walk. वो सभी काम करते हैं जो नॉर्मल हम 50-60 की उम्र में जो करते हैं. एंड दे आर वेरी वेरी हेल्दी एंड दे आर वेरी हैप्पी. एंड इट इज ड्यू टू a concept of ikigai. And today we won't go deep into ikigai, but in the ikigai there are 10 rules. And there are two authors who have written about ikigai, who wrote a book about ikigai, and it became very famous. And in that book they have documented about one of the traits of people in Okinawa, Japan. And that trait, they call it anti-fragile or anti-fragile. You say, what is anti-fragile? Fragile is the opposite of resilience. Someone who is not resilient is fragile. वो बहुत जल्दी टूट जाते हैं, either physically, mentally, or emotionally. And anti-fragile are the people. So when we were looking at the definition of resilience is that if this is your state before adversity, when adversity hits, you go down and you bounce back to this level, then you are resilient. So if you are resilient, you bounce back to the same level at which you were before the setback. But now anti-fragile are those people. What do? They are here and adversity hits them, actually they bounce back higher than they were before. Adversity उल्टा काम करती है उन पे. They are anti-fragile. And these are the special people who have kept humanity alive, who are happy, healthy, financially free, and who are an inspiration to others. कि resilient people अगर यहाँ पे थे, उनको सेटबैक हुआ, नीचे आ गए और वो यहीं तक बाउंस बैक करते हैं. एंटी फ्रेजाइल पीपल उससे भी ऊपर जाते हैं. They bounce back even higher than they were before. And how many of you would like to be anti-fragile? आप में से कितने लोग एंटी फ्रेजाइल बनना चाहेंगे? टाइप AF in the chat if you would like to become anti-fragile. अगर आप एंटी फ्रेजाइल बनना चाहेंगे, टाइप AF in the chat. Today I'm going to tell you the secret to become anti-fragile. Thank you. So many people, they say they want to be anti-fragile. Now, how to become anti-fragile? It is simple, but not easy. So anything which is simple need not be easy. So what do we need to do to become anti-fragile is, first of all, we have to look within. Take an inner inventory. And what is inner inventory? That's when we look at our map कि हमारा map क्या कह रहा है. जब कोई हमारी आलोचना करता है, हम कैसे बिहेव करते हैं? How do we react when somebody says bad words about us? यार ये बंदा तो बेकार है, उसके सेशन में मत जाओ, वो बकवास करता रहता है, totally useless guy. And when you hear that, you feel that, yeah, that's not the truth. So maybe parts of what I share is boring. But if you have a self-image which starts accepting whatever is thrown at you, you will give up. तो आपकी जो self-image होती है, we have to work on our map of the world and our self-image. And this self-image is built upon beliefs. So we have to look at our core beliefs about ourselves and the world. So one of the question is, am I living in a hostile world or a friendly world? And same way, you have to look at, okay, how do I view myself? Am I strong or am I weak? Do I give up easily? And people are bad. People cannot be trusted. How many of you that people cannot be trusted? Type yes in the chat if you feel that people cannot be trusted. लोगों पर भरोसा नहीं किया जा सकता. That doesn't mean that we will not lock our cars and houses when we go out. So would somebody like to share? You can raise your hand and then you can unmute yourself and you can speak. लोगों पर भरोसा नहीं किया जा सकता. वो कोई मेड रखते हैं तो वो कहते हैं कि वो चोरी ना कर ले. कोई एम्प्लॉय रखते हैं, वो हमें धोखा ना दे दे, गबन ना कर ले. वो उनको अगर कैश दिया जाता है तो वो कैश को मिसप्लेस ना कर दे या वो यूज कर लेंगे और गलत बिल कर देंगे. ऐसा, how many of you are in business and you have this fear that you cannot trust your employees with money? कि आप अगर किसी को एम्प्लॉय करते हैं, आप उस पर भरोसा नहीं कर सकते कि पैसे आप उनको अगर देंगे तो हो सकता है वो पैसे लेके चला जाए या अपने ऊपर खर्च कर लें, बढ़ा चढ़ा के बिल दे दें. How many of you have this fear? Type F in the chat if you have this fear. If you are in business and if you have this fear that if you employ people, तो वो धोखा दे सकते हैं पैसे के मामले में, वो आपको धोखा दे सकते हैं. Do you believe that? अगर आप वो बिलीव करते हैं तो आप आपको अपने मैप ऑफ द वर्ल्ड को देखने की जरूरत है। हाँ, धोखा होता है, और अगर आपके साथ पहले धोखा हुआ है, दैट डज नॉट मीन कि धोखा फिर से होगा। दोज हु अंडरगो डिवोर्स, उनको लगता है ऑल मेन आर चीट्स। अगर सभी मेन चीट करते हैं तो सक्सेसफुल मैरिजेस, हैप्पी मैरिजेस कैसे एग्जिस्ट करती हैं? एंड सम पीपल दे बिलीव कि माय किस्मत खराब है, मेरी तो किस्मत खराब है, मुझे लोग मिलते ही ऐसे हैं, मुझे बिजनेस में ऐसे लोग मिलते हैं जो धोखा देते हैं, मुझे रिलेशनशिप्स में ऐसे लोग मिलते हैं जो धोखा देते हैं, मेरी किस्मत खराब है, आई एम जिंक्स्ड। तो अगर आपका कोर बिलीफ है कि पीपल कैन नॉट बी ट्रस्टेड, एंड इफ यूर आई एम जिंक्स्ड, मेरी किस्मत खराब है, इसलिए मुझे सफलता नहीं मिल सकती, मुझे पैसा नहीं मिल सकता, मुझे बिजनेस में सफलता नहीं मिल सकती, तो these core beliefs create our self image and they create our map of the world. और अगर हमारा मैप ऑफ द वर्ल्ड फ्लॉड होगा, हमारा बिहेवियर एंड रिस्पॉन्स टू एक्सटर्नल इवेंट्स will also be flawed, and we will not have that inner courage to withstand the adversity, to withstand traumatic events. And when the recession hits, so many companies wind up, so many businesses wind up because they are not resilient. In order to survive, you have to first withstand. And a very recent example of Twitter. Twitter was a huge company. Businessman, he took over Twitter and he fired 50% of the employees. आधे एम्प्लॉइज को उन्होंने निकाल दिया क्योंकि खर्चे बहुत ज्यादा हो रहे थे, रेवेन्यू कम आ रही थी, और देयर वर ह्यूज लॉसेस, एंड ही डिड सम अदर डिसीजंस, एंड 25% मोर एम्प्लॉइज दे लेफ्ट। तो 50% को तो उन्होंने निकाल दिया, 25% खुद छोड़कर चले गए, तो 75% ऑफ द पीपल लेफ्ट द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। डिड ट्विटर कोलैप्स? सिर्फ 25% एम्प्लॉइज रह गए थे, बट ट्विटर हैज नॉट कोलैप्स्ड। और एक्चुअली उनके यूजर्स बड़े हैं, न्यू यूजर्स हु साइंड अप हैव इंक्रीज्ड, और उन्होंने नए फीचर्स रिलीज किए हैं। सो व्हाट डज दैट टेल यू अबाउट द पर्सन हु हैज ओवरटेकन? देयर नो डाउट उनके कुछ कंट्रोवर्शियल डिसीजंस थे, कुछ उन्होंने डिसीजंस लिए और वो वापस ले लिए, एंड ही इज द रिचेस्ट पर्सन ऑन अर्थ, और उसको लोग सुझाव दे रहे थे, एडवाइस दे रहे थे कि आपको ट्विटर को चलाना नहीं आता, आप जॉब छोड़ दीजिए, आप सीईओ मत रहिए। और अगर हमारी जब ईगो इतनी सी है, हमारी उपलब्धियां इतनी सी हैं, और हमें कोई कहता है कि तुम निकम्मे हो, नालायक हो, तुम्हें कुछ नहीं आता, तब हमारा जो ईगो है इतनी हर्ट हो जाती है। और जो दुनिया का, विश्व का सबसे अमीर आदमी है, जिसने बहुत सारी, करीब आधा दर्जन कंपनीज बनाई हैं जो कि दुनिया में बेस्ट हैं। टेस्ला इज ऑलमोस्ट $1 ट्रिलियन कंपनी, मार्केट कैप उसका एक समय हो गया था। द बिगेस्ट इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल कंपनी इन द वर्ल्ड। उन्होंने जो रॉकेट्स बनाए हैं वो स्पेस में जाके वापस आ जाते हैं, किसी और ने ऐसी रॉकेट टेक्नोलॉजी अभी तक नहीं बनाई। और उनको लोग कह रहे हैं कि आपको बिजनेस चलाना नहीं आता। तो अगर उनकी उनकी सेल्फ इमेज कैसी रही होगी कि हजारों लोग रोज उनको गालियां दे रहे हैं, एंड ही मेड दैट कंपनी रन with 25% of employees. Of course, it is unfortunate that so many people lost their jobs. But as a company, and as a person, Elon Musk is resilient. और वो resilience उनकी inner core जो है, core belief, उससे आता है। तो हमारी अगर आधारशिला स्ट्रांग होगी, उस पर बहुत ऊंची इमारत खड़ी हो सकती है। अगर हमारी आधारशिला वीक होगी, उस पर वो 4-5 मंजिलें भी नहीं टेकेंगे। जोशीमठ में क्या हो रहा है, क्रैक्स आ गए हैं, क्योंकि जो जमीन नीचे है उसकी वो जमीन स्ट्रांग नहीं है, मिट्टी खिसक रही है और इमारतें धराशायी हो रही हैं। दैट्स व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इन आवर वर्ल्ड. So if at our foundation, and that foundation comes from a spiritual foundation. And I would love to hear from you if you disagree with me here कि spiritual foundation के बगैर भी हमें आत्मिक बल, courage मिल सकता है. Is there somebody here who has an opinion that we can be courageous, we can be resilient if we do not have a spiritual foundation? क्या आप लोग ये मानते हैं? So that's why that spiritual foundation is very, very important. And even warriors, जो बड़े बड़े वॉरियर्स हैं, अगर हम मार्शल आर्ट्स लें ओरिएंट की, जो फार ईस्ट की है, जापान चाइना में जो मार्शल आर्ट्स हैं, उनकी जो फाउंडेशन है, आप जूडो कराटे लें, आप टाइक्वांडो लें, आइकिडो लें जापान की, उन सभी जो विधाएं हैं उनमें बेस इज स्पिरिचुअलिटी. दे टॉक अबाउट द फोर्स, द ची, जिसको प्राणा भी कहते हैं, वो ची की एनर्जी को रेगुलेट करके इमेंस पावर जनरेट करते हैं. ब्रूस ली कराटे के एक बहुत मशहूर मार्शल आर्टिस्ट हुए हैं, वो मूवीज में भी काम करते थे, और उनकी एक टेक्निक है 1 इंच टेक्निक. वो 1 इंच से ऐसे हिट करते थे एंड द ओपोनेंट विड गो फ्लाइंग. तो आप 1 इंच के डिस्टेंस से किसी को हिट करके इतना फोर्स कैसे, वो फोर्स जनरेट होता है फ्रॉम द स्पिरिचुअल एनर्जी, फ्रॉम द ची. तो अगर वो प्राण शक्ति आपके अंदर सही से रेगुलेट नहीं हो रही, आप वो स्पिरिचुअल पर्सनालिटी को इनकलकेट नहीं कर रहे, उस पे काम करके उसको मजबूत या बलवान नहीं कर रहे, तो आप रेजिलिएंट नहीं. तो फर्स्ट थिंग इज हैविंग ए स्पिरिचुअल फाउंडेशन और ए स्पिरिचुअल प्रैक्टिस. तो किसी भी प्रकार का ध्यान, जप, पूजा पाठ, त्राटक, कुछ भी आप ले लीजिए, डू दैट डेली. जिस धर्म को मैं बिलोंग करता हूँ, सिखिज्म में पाठ का बहुत महत्व है कि रोज पाठ करना चाहिए. और शुरू शुरू में मुझे लगता था कि रोज क्यों करना चाहिए, जब हमको पता है उसमें क्या लिखा है, हम रोज क्यों करें. वो रोज रोज करने से हमारी स्पिरिचुअल इम्यूनिटी बढ़ती है. कोई भी पूजा पाठ जब तब आप करते हैं, इट इंक्रीजेस अवर स्पिरिचुअल इम्यूनिटी एंड दैट गिव्स अस द फाउंडेशन फ्रॉम वेयर वी कैन बाउंस बैक. और हम अपने मैप पर कैसे काम करेंगे, कोर बिलीफ्स पे. वी हैव टू राइट डाउन. तो उसमें जर्नलिंग काम आता है. वी कैन राइट डाउन आवर थॉट्स इन अ जर्नल. तो जब हमारे साथ कोई बुरी घटना घटती है, जब कोई हमारी आलोचना करता है या कोई बुरा भला कहता है, या कई बार कोई समीक्षक समीक्षा करके न्यूज़पेपर में, ब्लॉग में लिख देता है, और जो हमें पता है झूठ है, वो सत्य नहीं है, या तो उनकी इंटेंशन सही नहीं है, जानबूझकर वो गलत लिख रहे हैं, या उनको जानकारी नहीं है, दे आर इग्नोरेंट, दे डोंट हैव द एंटायर फैक्ट्स विद देम. दैट्स व्हाई व्हाट दे आर सेइंग इज नॉट द कंप्लीट ट्रुथ. उस समय आप अपने विचार लिखिए, आपके मन में क्या विचार आ रहे हैं. वो जो विचार आपको आते हैं, वो आपकी फाउंडेशन से आते हैं, वो आपके मैप ऑफ द वर्ल्ड से आते हैं. अगर हमारा मैप ऑफ द वर्ल्ड डिस्टॉर्टेड है, then these things they will affect us physically, mentally and emotionally. But अगर हमारा मैप ऑफ द वर्ल्ड फिक्स्ड है, उसमें हमारी स्पिरिचुअल फाउंडेशन है, और हम रोज उस पर काम करते हैं, we will become resilient. और resilient बनने के लिए हमें क्या करना पड़ेगा? We will also have to set boundaries. बाउंड्रीज क्या होती हैं? That we will not allow other people to trample us. We will not allow other people to treat us like a doormat. और जब आप ना करना चाहें और आप ना कर सकें, if you are able to say no when you want to say no, that shows your resilience. आप में से कितने लोग हैं जो ना नहीं कर सकते? It is difficult for you to say no. Type N in the chat if it is to some people for some of the things. आप कुछ चीजों के लिए कुछ लोगों को ना नहीं कर सकते. That shows कि you perhaps don't know how to set your boundaries. अगर कोई मुझे रात के 9 बजे के बाद कॉल करता है, मैं फोन नहीं उठाता हूं, unless it's an emergency. And मैं कोई चिकित्सक नहीं हूं, आई एम नॉट अ डॉक्टर, तो इमरजेंसी नाम की कोई चीज नहीं है मेरी प्रोफेशनल लाइफ में. बट इफ इट इज somebody who's very close to me, if he or she calls me in middle of the night, I'll pick up the call. Otherwise, I do not entertain because I've set the boundaries. तो बाउंड्रीज सेट करना बहुत जरूरी है, और वो बाउंड्रीज भी आपके मैप ऑफ द वर्ल्ड से आते हैं, हमारी कोर बिलीफ से आते हैं. अगर आपको लगता है कि फला व्यक्ति मुझसे नाराज हो जाएगा अगर मैं उनको ना कहूंगा, तो हम एग्रीएबल हो जाते हैं. एन एग्रीएबल पर्सनालिटी एग्रीज विद एवरीथिंग. तो वो अगर जॉब में होंगे तो उन पर बोझ डाल दिया जाएगा कि जो दूसरे कुछ निकम्मे निठल्ले लोग हैं जो काम पूरा नहीं करते, उनका काम भी उन पर आ जाएगा, बिकॉज दे आर एग्रीएबल, दे आर नॉट एबल टू से नो. If you are not able to say no, you will not be resilient. In order to be resilient, preserve your energy physically, mentally and emotionally. और वो कब preserve होगी? When you set your priorities right, you set your boundaries and you reiterate and adhere to your boundaries. मैंने एक प्रोग्राम किया था recently, and that would start at morning 5 a.m. and 4:45 the Zoom would open, और जो 5:01 तक आता था वो उस सेशन में एंटर नहीं कर पाता था. And I told this beforehand, anybody who signs up, they need to be in the class by 5, and 5:01 Zoom will get closed. So I set those boundaries because the requirements of that program is very tough. If you are not mentally tough, you will not complete. It was a 40-day program, and you cannot complete the 40-day program if you don't have that mental strength, if you don't have that strength of character. इसके लिए मैंने वो stringent boundaries रखी थी, and yet people came and they would join at that time. तो अगर आपको लगे कि नहीं, लोगों को बुरा लगेगा, there were people who were very close to me whom I had to throw out of the program because they could not adhere to the rules. तो अगर मुझे लगेगा कि नहीं, लोग बुरा मान जाएंगे, तो कुछ लोगों को बुरा मानने की आदत होती है. आप कुछ भी कहेंगे तो वो बुरा मान जाएंगे, आप कुछ नहीं कहेंगे तो वो बुरा मान जाएंगे, आप कुछ करेंगे तो वो बुरा मान जाएंगे, आप कुछ नहीं करेंगे तो बुरा मान जाएंगे, आप उनसे पूछ के करेंगे तो बुरा मान जाएंगे, उनसे बिना पूछे करेंगे तो भी वो बुरा मान जाएंगे. तो बुरा लगने की जो बीमारी है, आप उसका इलाज नहीं कर सकते. आप अपनी बाउंड्री सेट कर सकते हैं, आप अपने स्पिरिचुअल कैरेक्टर पर काम कर सकते हैं, और जब आप वो काम करते हैं तब आप रिजिलियंट बनते हैं. So you have to take care of yourself physically, mentally and emotionally. तो ये 3-4 चीजों पर अगर हम काम करेंगे तो we will not only become resilient, we will become anti-fragile. और anti-fragile बनने के लिए there are 10 rules of ikigai. So actually today we don't have enough time. I will have, in this 23-day series, I'm going to do one session on ikigai. where I will talk about the 10 rules of Ikigai. और उसमें फिजिकल भी है, वो डाइट पे बोलते हैं कि खाना कैसा खाना चाहिए, कितना खाना चाहिए, रोज आप योगा, मेडिटेशन या वॉक आपको करनी चाहिए, एंड दे से यू शुड स्माइल, कनेक्ट विद नेचर एंड हैव गुड फ्रेंड्स, और फाइंड योर इकिगाई. इकिगाई इज योर पैशन. तो उसमें 4 एलिमेंट्स होते हैं. अगर आप वो चारों रूल, सॉरी, और सारे 10 रूल फॉलो करते हैं, over a period of time you will become resilient. And what I have seen is resilient communities, resilient countries, resilient human beings, they not only survive, they actually inspire others. वो कम्युनिटीज आज जिंदा हैं. बहुत सारी सभ्यताएं लुप्त हो गई, और वो सभ्यताएं इसलिए लुप्त हो गई कि उस सभ्यता के जो विशेषता थी उनको लोगों ने बरकरार नहीं रखा. भाषाएं लुप्त हो जाती हैं अगर लोग उसको प्रैक्टिस नहीं करते. मैं विदेश में काफी रहा भी हूं और जाता भी रहता हूं, और वहां पर मैंने देखा है कि लोग जो भारत से जाते हैं उनको बहुत शर्म आती है अपनी मातृभाषा में बात करते हुए. अगर हिंदी है या पंजाबी है तो वो अंग्रेजी में ही बात करते हैं, क्योंकि उनको शर्म महसूस होती है यदि वो हिंदी या पंजाबी में बात करें. तो वहां पर हिंदी या पंजाबी का प्रचलन बहुत कम है, और यदि वही चलता रहा तो वो भाषा विलुप्त हो जाएगी. आपके जो प्रैक्टिसेस हैं वो प्रैक्टिसेस विलुप्त हो जाएंगे. लेकिन रेजिलिएंट कम्युनिटीज वो होती हैं who have a strength of character, they know what do they stand for, and they fiercely defend that without being aggressive, without overpowering others. They defend what do they stand for. तो आपका अगर सेल्फ इमेज बहुत स्ट्रांग होगा, स्पिरिचुअल फाउंडेशन बहुत स्ट्रांग होगी, यू विल बिकम रेजिलिएंट. तो जब भी कोई दिक्कत आएगी, परेशानी आएगी, तब आप ये नहीं कहेंगे कि मेरी किस्मत खराब है, मेरे साथ तो होता ही ऐसे है. तो आपका पहला बिजनेस फेल होगा, दूसरा फेल होगा, तीसरा फेल होगा, चौथा फेल होगा, आपके 10 बिजनेस फेल हो जाएंगे, आप 11वां बिजनेस करेंगे. आप देखेंगे कि मुझे उसमें पिछली बार जब मैंने लॉस फेस किया था तो क्या गलती थी, मैं क्या अलग कर सकता हूं, व्हाट कैन आई डू डिफरेंटली, हाउ कैन आई इम्प्रूव. और वो हमेशा पॉजिटिव रहते हैं. जो रेजिलिएंट लोग होते हैं वो बहुत ही सकारात्मक सोच वाले होते हैं, रिगार्डलेस ऑफ व्हाट हैपेंस विद देम. तो लेट मी समराइज कि रेजिलिएंट बनने के लिए, एंटी फ्रेजाइल बनने के लिए हमको एक स्ट्रांग स्पिरिचुअल फाउंडेशन चाहिए. हमें अपने मैप ऑफ द वर्ल्ड पर काम करना है, अपने कोर बिलीफ्स पर काम करना है, और हमें बाउंड्री सेट करनी है. फिजिकली, मेंटली, इमोशनली हमको अपना टेक केयर, सेल्फ केयर करना है. ये चीजें अगर हम करते हैं तो वी विल बिकम रेजिलिएंट, वी विल बी हैप्पी, हेल्दी एंड प्रॉस्परस. और दूसरे लोग हमारे पास पूछने आएंगे कि अभी आप इतने खुश कैसे रहते हैं, आप हर सर्कमस्टेंस में इतने पॉजिटिव कैसे रहते हैं. तो मेरा यही संदेश है सबके लिए. माय मैसेज इज दैट इफ यू फॉलो दीज प्रिंसिपल्स यू विल बिकम रेजिलिएंट. सो नाउ आई एम ओपन टू क्वेश्चंस. अगर आप पे कोई सवाल, शंका, संदेह है, और इफ यू हैव एनी ऑब्जर्वेशंस you can share that. You can raise your hand in Zoom and then you can unmute yourself. Yes, Ritu ji.
थैंक यू रविंदर सर, बहुत अच्छा. आज आपने इतना अच्छा बोला है ना कि मैं तो तालियां बजा रही थी, इतनी खुश हो रही थी, इतने अच्छे से आज आपने समझाया. थैंक यू सो मच, वंडरफुल. मैं सिर्फ कॉम्प्लीमेंट देने के लिए हैंड रेज किया है आपको.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
थैंक यू. यस,
Thank you. Anybody else? Would you like to share something or ask something? Do you have any question or query or observation? Okay. take that as a no. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining this session, and we'll keep bringing more such sessions, and you can choose the topics. और उस टॉपिक पर अगर मेरे को कुछ knowledge होगी, then I'll definitely share that, and I would also try to bring other experts during these 23 days. We'll keep bringing more and more topics for you. So thank you very much for joining, and have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Ravinder ji.